Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Right Side with Doug Billings. Thanks for watching. Hey, don't forget, subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform. We're on all of them, whether it's Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Pandora, whatever. Subscribe to our show, please. Also, go over to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, because you want to see all of the glory, the majesty, and the splendor, not to mention the charisma, that the show has to offer in the video format as well. So today, we have with us again KrisAnne Hall. KrisAnne is a constitutional attorney and an expert in all things constitutional. She has had quite an experience recently on Southwest Airlines. We just found this out prior to our interview today. You may have seen the viral video where a Southwest Airlines flight attendant kicked a passenger off the plane using the excuse that he wasn't wearing the mask and wasn't in compliance with their policies, when in fact he was. But the mask happened to be a Donald Trump mask, and he was wearing a hat that said "Blacks for Trump." African-American man kicked off Southwest Airlines, and although KrisAnne didn't ask us to do this, I'm appealing to Southwest. You've got to make this story right. Kicking somebody off and not telling the truth in your statements about the issue. So KrisAnne will be here. We're going to talk about that episode, that viral episode. We'll also talk a little bit about the Amy Coney Barrett nomination and how KrisAnne thinks she'll rule from the bench. And then we'll get into a little bit of the big tech censorship issue as it pertains to the Hunter Biden laptop, but also, more importantly, perhaps, the USA Today endorsement of Biden and taking out their full-page ad, which is in essence a political campaign donation. The censorship, the suppressing of information, and this USA Today endorsement amounts to election fraud, election interference, and are in fact what we call in-kind donations to a political campaign. We'll discuss all of that and more right here on The Right Side with Doug Billings and today's guest, KrisAnne Hall. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Right Side with Doug Billings. We've got KrisAnne Hall with us again today. It's our second time together here on The Right Side. And KrisAnne, thank you again for your time and being with us here on The Right Side.
It is my pleasure. I am praying for this show that you see abundance of new listeners and that your message is uninhibited by the censors.
Right. Yes. Well, thank you for your prayers. We need them. We're trying to get some legs on this show and run with it. But we appreciate you being on it because that helps to that end. It helps us to get folks to listen in. So we appreciate your time and your expertise. Now, before we came on air, you and I were chatting, and I've got to just tell everybody, KrisAnne, you and your husband are the Southwest Airlines ruckus causers. You're the ones that got booted off or threatened to be booted off the plane because your husband he dared to lower his mask to take a sip of a drink or
it wasn't actually my husband. It was our business colleague at the time.
Okay.
His name's
All right.
Philip. It was Philip. Philip was actually Philip sparked the ire of a particular flight attendant, a young Hispanic man, when he boarded the plane with his Black Voices for Trump hat and his Trump 2020 mask. So it was really all about the mask, all about the hat, all about the message, because frankly, there wasn't enough time to be about anything else, and then they completely spun out the story and fabricated events that simply did not exist, which frankly didn't even have time to exist because we had not even left the gate when they called the supervisor to come and take Philip off the plane.
Oh,
so
gosh.
it's just crazy. There were only 2 interactions with the flight attendants before the supervisor came back. We were actually pulling away from the gate. They came back to the gate, and the supervisor was waiting there for him. So they called the supervisor before any of this had ever happened. It was just crazy.
You know, this is why 58 or 59, 60% of people that are in the Trump camp don't put up signs in their yards and don't put bumper stickers on their cars, because they'll be targeted, KrisAnne.
Yeah.
I mean, unbelievable. Well, not knowing that that was you when I first saw that video that has now just gone worldwide viral, I had commented on Twitter, and I know that your Twitter account has been suspended. You know, surprise of surprises that the censorship king Twitter has suspended your account. But I made a comment to tag the CEO of Southwest and say, you know, I fly Southwest. I think everybody, at least at one time or another, has flown Southwest. And what is up with this, you know, Mr. CEO? And so we helped to spread the video, but gosh, until just 10 minutes ago, I had no idea that was you. Wow.
Well, we have been flying Southwest exclusively for 10 years because of the customer service that we received. I mean, I personally have all of the Southwest perks that are available to any customer at any level because we fly so much and we fly exclusively Southwest. And so the change in the behavior of their flight attendants over the last 6 months has been very shocking to us. I mean, this is not the first time. This is the first time we've been associated or even seen somebody removed from a flight. But this is not our first experience with the change in customer service attitude of the Southwest flight attendants.
Well, now, has their attitude, is this the first time that Philip or anybody else in your crew and on your team has worn, you know, that kind of a hat or that kind of a mask?
Well, we are primarily nonpartisan. You know, the tagline for my podcast is liberty over security, principle over party, and truth over personality. So we don't endorse, I personally do not endorse candidates as a matter of policy. So Philip, the people who travel with us, the people who work with us, I'm not going to silence their speech. They do whatever they want. They represent themselves. And so Philip was the first person to travel with us to actually, you know, have Trump gear. And so this is the first time we saw that happen. Now, I do want to mention that my husband has a whole new attitude on endorsement at this point. And he has, he went out and bought his Trump gear and flew home. When we had to fly home on Southwest, he had a big red hoodie that said right on the chest, keep America great, and was enjoying every triggered look that he received.
It is, Trump deranged syndrome is a real phenomenon. That's for sure.
Yes.
Well, so KrisAnne, wow.
It's sad. It's so sad.
What an adventure. It's so much more. And again, it's funny on one level, but really not. It's a huge inconvenience, but that was you. And I'm just going, once you know the person, you know, in this viral video, you go, wow, unbelievable. Well, hopefully Southwest will make sure that when we put this video out, we say a few words, kind words to Southwest, and they correct their mistake, because what you said is they're not, in their statements, they're not being truthful about what happened.
Right. And you know, Philip and I've done a couple of interviews, and people asked us, are you ready to sue? And we, first and foremost, we did not, the whole rhetoric out there is that we set this up. Come on now. I fly, I don't know how many times a week, right? Since this stuff, since Trump started running for president, and we've never done anything. So the idea that we set this up is completely ludicrous to begin with. And secondly, we've been asked, are you going to sue? We have no intentions of suing. We just want Southwest to admit their error, to actually apologize for the humiliation that they served upon Philip for the political message. I want Southwest to say, this is not a reflection of our customer service. Our employee was out of line. We don't need any money. We just need to know that Southwest still stands by the customer service that has made them the airlines that they are supposed to be.
Wow. Well, Unbelievable. I mean, it's just, it leaves you dumbfounded and speechless on so many levels. And I hope that all gets worked out and for the better. If they just do the right thing, I think it'll turn out. So I had just a few topics, and I know time very limited today. So whereas we could spend an easy hour on any of these things, let me just go down the bullet list real quick.
Right.
Get the KrisAnne Hall take on these things. And we're going to start with the Amy Coney Barrett nominee. I know that, I watched your show about when you were running through some of the judges that may be up for consideration, and you gave your analysis from the constitutional attorney perspective on how they might rule and so forth. I think clearly the country is now, the majority of the country is in favor of this brilliant woman. But having watched your show, I know she wasn't your first choice. So how do you think this is all coming down? What was your overall impression with her? And how do you think she'll rule from the bench once she's there?
Now, let me just initially say this. What I'm about to say is irrespective of how I believe she will hold as she's sitting on the bench. I believe that she handled herself very well during these hearings, the best that I have seen so far. She handled herself better than Gorsuch and Kavanaugh combined.
Yeah.
I was very, very impressed with her demeanor, very impressed with the acuity of her answers. The woman is absolutely brilliant. Now, I don't think you can be a successful attorney / judge and raise 7 children at the same time and be someone who is not quick on their feet. Yeah. So she is absolutely brilliant. I think that that is without question, and at least should be without question at this point. What irritates me is the fact that the same ideologues who are running around America saying we need to empower women, we need bold and brave and intelligent women in the forefront, we need to lift up women in America, are the same ones who are running around trying to tear her down simply because they don't like how she believes in her faith.
Right.
And it's just absolutely disgusting. I can't even think of a better word for that. Disgusting, the way these ideologues let their bias and their prejudice lead them and demand that they tear down a woman who should be an absolute role model for American young girls and women across America.
Yeah, and men. I mean, I think she's brilliant on all levels and across all genders. I think that, just watching her, and I'm not the first one to comment on the fact that she never took a single note. She recounted all of these rulings and cases from years and decades, and could comment intelligently on all of them. And the whole, I understand the frustration that they have. President Trump has had 3 nominees to the Supreme Court. I don't think it's ever happened before. And he could, if he wins, he could potentially get 2 more on the bench, couldn't he? I mean, depending on, Breyer is certainly not going to be around, for much longer.
Definitely Breyer. I would love to see Roberts retire.
I think so would we all.
Roberts leaving the court would be a greater victory for the Constitution than Breyer leaving the court.
Really?
Oh, absolutely, because we know who Breyer is. We expect him to hold as he does. It's Roberts that is the wolf in sheep's clothing. It's Roberts who pretends to be something that he is not. And it's to the unsuspecting people, because most people who do their research, people who watch and who understand the Constitution as I do, know that Roberts has never been a conservative justice. He's never been a constitutional justice. So when I speak of conservative and constitutional, conservative is a step below constitution, right? Because conservative depends on ideology, and you can be a conservative statist as well as a liberal statist, which is contrary to the Constitution to begin with, right? So if you review Roberts and his opinions throughout his career, Roberts at best is occasionally conservative, hardly ever, if ever, constitutional. I think he's actually constitutional by accident when it fits whose ever ideology is pushing Roberts' buttons. You see, I know that Roberts knows the right thing. He proved that to us in his opinion, his Affordable Care Act opinion. Not that he actually gave the proper opinion in the Affordable Care Act opinion, but that he inserted the proper perspective. And most people don't know this because the media did not highlight this. But in the Affordable Care Act opinion, where Roberts wrote the majority opinion, he said specifically, and I use this in my classes all the time. People are shocked because not even the quote unquote conservatives are pointing this out. Roberts spoke to the states, reaffirming the fact that they have a right and a duty to refuse to enforce the National Health Care Act. He said they are separate and independent sovereigns, and they have to act like it. So Roberts knows the right thing. But whomever is pulling his strings doesn't let him do that.
Right. Okay. So that's the Supreme Court. We got limited time today. So let me just segue into a different topic, censorship and big tech. You have been personally affected on Twitter. Your account has been suspended. Of course, now the big news of the day, the Hunter Biden emails, his laptop, et cetera, Google being sued by, I think, 11 states' attorney generals. But my question to you, KrisAnne, the censorship of Biden and the way that these companies are, the big tech companies are censoring, they are in effect, aren't they? And I want your legal opinion. Aren't they in effect giving in-kind donations to the Biden campaign by suppressing information and bolstering his campaign? I mean, it's beyond just the frustration of the censorship. I mean, the DOJ suing, I don't think it's the DOJ's fault or purpose. Where's the FEC in all of this?
It's interesting that you say that because my podcast yesterday, episode 1198, I spent 30 minutes actually talking about this particular thing. And it's really refreshing to see you and to hear you talk about it from this way as well. And that's exactly what I called for on my podcast yesterday. We need FEC investigations. We have USA Today that has come out and openly endorsed Joe Biden. Now, you can't claim to be a member of the press, of the free press, and then give an entire colored paged article on a candidate, not only just an expose, but saying we actively endorse this candidate, we actively encourage you to not vote for Trump, and then claim to be a member of the free press. At that point, you've become a political PAC. And so that, just like you said, they are giving donation to the Biden campaign. And if it were anybody else besides the media, there'd be FEC all over this saying, well, what's the value of this? Because the FEC has campaign donation ceilings and thresholds that the average Joe can't avoid. But then the press will try to use have their eat their cake and have it too, and say, okay, we're press, we're exempt from FEC investigation, but we're going to use our time, our money, the equivalent of thousands of dollars. If you tried to purchase the spread that USA Today voluntarily gave to Joe Biden, it would cost you thousands of dollars. And under normal circumstances, if someone actually purchased that spread in USA Today, then the FEC would have to claim, Biden campaign would have to claim that as a donation. The people who bought that would have to claim that as a donation. And yet here we have the USA Today hiding under the false shield of freedom of the press when they're not acting at that.
Good. Now, would it be different if their editorial board had endorsed? Because we see, editorial boards speak in favor or disfavor of candidates from time to time. What's the key difference here, Chris? I'm perplexed by it.
There is no difference.
There is no difference.
There is no difference. Okay. We just choose. The government chooses to hide, avert their eyes because they don't want to deal with the issue of press and publisher and platform and all this other craziness that they created when they stepped outside the Constitution to define all those things to begin with. I mean, that's another thing that I addressed on episode 1198 yesterday, is this whole confusion created by the government defining publisher, platform, press, news,
Well,
when they're not even allowed to do that by Constitution.
well, I was just going to say, I am clearly not a constitutional attorney like you are, but I'm listening to you, it dawns on me that why in the world is the DOJ, the executive branch has no authority here. It should be a state issue. Am I right?
It should be a state issue, but we've allowed the federal government to leave the confines of their constitutional delegated power to create antitrust laws, to create the Consumer Protection Acts, to create the what is it called? And it's just left my mind. I hate when that happens. These things that should be just like that to me, right? All of a sudden, because I'm sitting here talking about it, you have the
I get it.
Idea of decency, of the Decency Act. These are all not delegated powers to the federal government, to which they have no jurisdiction. But because we have usurped, stolen power from the states on the federal level, people now habitually run to the federal government rather than to their state's attorneys general.
And why is President Trump mentioning what I think he calls, and I made a note here, Section 230? Do I have that right?
That's the Decency Act that I was talking about.
Yeah,
this is something that I specifically talk about in 1198 from yesterday's show.
Okay.
It's rather ironic that they want to use that section to go after them, when in reality, Section 1 is what they're quoting. Section 2 actually creates the protection. So by definition, Section 2 of subsection 2 actually creates. So you have 230 C1. Well, 230 C2 is what creates the exception and shields these entities, platform, whatever, from civil lawsuits. If we didn't have the federal government shielding people from civil lawsuits, then the market itself would be a check and balance. The people would be able to engage in the civil law procedure checks and balances. And unfortunately, that's just not possible anymore, because number one, and this is something that we need to understand, Google, YouTube, Facebook would not have the power that they have if the government hadn't funded them initially with grant money to give them a leg up above their competitors.
Right.
Number two, then you have the Decency Act, which shields them from civil lawsuit, setting them aside from the entire market procedure.
I got it. Yeah. Wow. So and we're going to say so long here pretty quickly. I know you've got another appointment coming up soon. It's, censorship, in my view, I view this bloodied, hatcheted up story of Biden's, Hunter Biden's laptop and the censorship that surrounds it as a way to give resurrection to the story in general. I don't think the censorship is going to protect Biden like the media thinks it is. I think that people are more interested in it now that it's been censored than they would have been perhaps if they had just let the public square and the public debate, or the public debate within the public square, happen. I don't think censorship is ever a winning proposition, and if we let these big tech companies continue down the road unchecked and unbalanced, KrisAnne, I don't. There's not a lot of hope in that scenario.
Well, I do agree with you in the Hunter Biden story. It sort of reflects back on Shakespeare. Methinks thou dost protest too much. So I think what we're seeing now is a people, we already have a society of people gravitating against this idea that government should have an immunity. We have an organized offense against qualified immunity. People are sick and tired of those in power issuing rules and regulations they don't comply with themselves. And so had I agree, had this Hunter Biden thing come into the forefront and people had dealt with it in the the court of public opinion, I think that it would have waxed and waned by now. But the fact that they keep trying to protect him, the fact that people are now starting to see him as the quote unquote aristocracy who is now above the law, avoiding the consequences that the average person would be and is subject to. is really going to hurt them in the long run.
Well, you're kind to him. I've referred to him as the king of the swamp and the crown prince of corruption. So you're being more kind in your. I think Biden in that whole. It just reeks of the the cronyism of lifelong political politicians. So at any rate, listen, I know you've got to run. I appreciate as always your time. I know you're at KrisAnneHall.com and you're on Facebook. Any place else we can find you and our viewers might be able to look you up?
Absolutely. On any platform, you can find me under my name, KrisAnne Hall, KrisAnne Hall. We are on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Parler, and LinkedIn. Those are the platforms that we are on right now. That's always subject to change with the censorship the way it is, but right now that's where we are. And if you want to watch the original uncut version of the YouTube of the Southwest fiasco, that is actually on my YouTube channel.
Okay, good. We'll head over there and take a look at it. KrisAnne Hall, ladies and gentlemen, constitutional attorney and expert on all things Constitution. We appreciate your time, KrisAnne. It helps our show get the legs underneath it that we want, and we appreciate you taking time to be with us today on the right side.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good day. So long. Okay.